run with you and carry you over the hard places. Growing with him is your goal.
Welcome to the Ministry Company Podcast. You're listening to a teaching from the Ministry Company Church in London, Ontario, Canada. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Ministry Company.
Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there, the grandmothers, like we said, all of you who are out there who are a mom to those around you. I like starting out with definitions. So there were some really cool definitions about a mother. Even in the Strong's Concordance, which is like a Bible dictionary almost for people who haven't heard of it, it says that a mother is the bond of a family. And I think that's cool, right? Like anytime you are bonding your family together, you're a mother. Whether that's your biological children or maybe you're bonding your siblings to your parents, that's you mothering. And it says that a mother is to join in affinity. And I had to look up affinity because I am not a huge word person. And it was a spontaneous or natural liking or sympathy towards someone or something. And it's like, everyone looks at Abby and has a spontaneous, natural liking for that child. So it's like, no matter who you are, you're mothering her. Every time you look at her and you're like, oh, she's so sweet. Look at those curls. Look at her in that red car rolling around the church, right? That's mothering. And even if you go into just the regular dictionary, it says mothering is to bring up a child with care or affinity. So every time you bring up a child with care or affinity, you are a mother. And when I think about mothers, the first one that I thought about was Hannah in the Bible. And if you don't know where that's from, it's from 1 Samuel 1:20. And one of the things that she says about Samuel, who's her child, is, for this child I've prayed. So if you have prayed for a child, that is you mothering them. So we can kind of restrict that to like biological mothers. And I know recently we've kind of expanded that and understood motherhood in other ways, but this is for you if you have prayed for a child, if you have bonded a family together, and if you have shown care and affinity for a kid. So I just wanted to encourage you that we have been chosen for this time as mothers of all of the kids in the entirety of time. God paired you with those kids. He could have made you a mother of any child at any time in history. He could have paired any kid with you, but he chose those kids and you to be paired together because that was the best match. So all of those days that you're like, I don't know if I can do this, he knows you can because he has paired you eternally together with those kids. He has picked you out of every mother for those kids because he knew you were the best for that job. So I just wanted to encourage you with that. I took a quote off of a book, and it was a book that I kind of read earlier in my walk as a Christian and earlier in my motherhood, and it was called Grace for the Race, and it was just like little short stories, almost like those bathroom books that you've got sitting there, little short stories. And on the back it says, God isn't looking for perfect first place finishers. Instead, he's inviting you to surrender your schedule, your emotions, and even your relationships to him. He's longing to run with you and to carry you over the hard place. Growing with him is your goal. So that is our goal as mothers and as those who are mothering kids, not the endless to-do lists, not the things that you think you should do or the things you have to do, but that growing with him is your goal. So I wanted to look at 3 different types of parents in the Bible. So the first one is the one with many worries and decisions. Anyone have many worries and decisions to make? Whether that's like decisions about how you're going to feed your kids, how many hours you're going to work, what schedule you have at work, or going to kids, what high school you're going to go to, what courses you're taking next year. There are many worries and decisions over all of life. So we're going to turn to Matthew 17. and verse 14. So this is the story. There might be a few different headings on the top of your story. It might be Jesus heals a boy with a demon, or Jesus heals an epileptic boy, however your Bible phrases it. So I'm going to start in verse 14, and we're not going to read the whole thing, just to about verse 18. And when they came to the crowd, a man came up to him, and kneeling before him said, "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he has seizures and suffers terribly. For often he falls into the fire, and often the water. And I brought him to your disciples, and they could not heal him." And Jesus answered, "O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him here to me." And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was healed instantly. So I kind of wanted to focus on a few different parts of that. Anyone here have someone that they are concerned for because they're suffering? Yeah. Anyone have someone that they are concerned for their safety? Anyone have someone who they're concerned for their spiritual life? That's probably all of us in here, right? And that's this father. This father is at a loss. He's tried so many things. It says that this boy's been sick since childhood. If this was your son, you would have tried absolutely everything, right? It's not even just like the woman who had the issue of blood and she's trying it for herself. This is for your kid. There's a different level of desperation when it's your child, right? And he's probably spent lots of sleepless nights over this, trying to figure it out. He's probably laying by the fire, because their homes are heated with fire, sleeping with one eye open, wondering if his child's going to have a seizure or whatever and end up in the fire in the middle of the night. Where they were is beside the Sea of Galilee. He was probably a fisherman. Your kids would have grown up to do what you did. He's probably got his son on the boat with him. It says he falls in the water. We're not talking about a puddle, right? Like, he's probably falling off the side of the boat in the Sea of Galilee while his father's trying to teach him the trade that he's going to have when he grows up, right? And all of these things he's worried about, right? Is he worried about his son going overboard? Is he worried about his son in the middle of the night? What sort of life is he going to have? What about when it's his own house and there's a fire that's heating it? When it's his career and he's out on the boat himself, right? These are all the worries that this parent has. And we might not be concerned about our child's fishing career or the fire that's heating our child's house, right? But we've got other worries. Maybe your child's chronic health condition. How are they going to manage it when I'm not here to help them with it, right? Maybe their emotions. They're dealing with depression, anxiety. How are they going to deal with that for the rest of their life? Maybe friends that aren't the best influences, that you're worried they're over at their friend's house. I don't know that I want them at their friend's house, but how do I say no without driving them into those friends' arms more, right? Those are the kinds of worries that we have, right? And the continuous, everyday choices that this father would have had to make. Should he go out on the boat with me today? Or do I leave him home where the fire is? Are we going out today? Maybe we just fish from the side of the sea. Maybe, but then we won't have enough food. We won't have enough income. And we're here, and we're like, breastfed or bottle, cloth diapers, or disposable, co-sleeping, cry it out. Too much TV? Not enough TV? Because I need them to be sitting quiet for a few minutes too, right? How much sugar? Are they out with their friends? Which friends? Do they do extracurriculars? How many extracurriculars are too much, right? We have those endless decisions as parents. Right from birth, there's an endless amount of things that we could fill our minds with, right? Even if you don't have kids yet and you're trying to figure out, do I get a second job? Do we buy a house now or not? Are we getting another vehicle? Should we fix this vehicle or buy another one? There's constant decisions and worries. Work demands, rocky marriage, right? Like all of these possible things that we could take care of. An aging family member that we need to take care of. Fights with friends, family members, coworkers. So the response of this father here, in amongst all of these worries and decisions, is that he comes to Jesus. And can you imagine his relief when he sees his sons healed? Right? All of those decisions that he no longer has to think about, all of those worries he no longer has, all of those things that are just lifted off of his shoulders. And that's our solution too, right? Our solution to our parenting worries, the solution to the endless decisions, the solution to the endless things that fill our minds are to come to Jesus, just like that father did. It's not another self-help book. It's not another amazing chore chart that you're sure is going to make it so the kids help out this time, right? It's not another course or a quick fix or IV caffeine through you so you can do more because you just have more energy. It's none of those. The solution is come to Jesus. That is the only solution. Sit at his feet. Plant yourself into the word. Worship. Pray. Seek his face. You don't have to do more to fix those worries. You don't have to think more to make the right decision. It's sit at his feet. Be with Jesus because he's already done it. You don't need to do more. You don't need to be more. You are already, like we talked about today, the beloved, chosen child of the King of Kings. There is nothing more you need to do. And in Matthew 11:28, Matthew 11, verse 28, says, "Come to me, all you who are labored and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." That's all. Come to Jesus. You don't need to worry about any of those things. So the second parent that we're going to look at is the one whose hope is gone. So this is a little bit more. You're not worrying. You're not making all these decisions. You just feel hopeless. And we're going to go to Luke chapter 7. And we're going to start in verse 11. So this is the widow's son who is being raised. Soon afterward, he went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a great crowd went with him. As he drew near the gate to the town, behold, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And a considerable crowd from the town was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he came up and touched the bier, and the bearers stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, arise." And the dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized them, and they glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has risen among us, and God has visited his people." And this report about him spread through the whole of Judea and around the surrounding country. So this parent's in a little bit more of a desperate situation, right? Her son's dead. And maybe your current parenting feels a little bit more like this widow. What she had hoped for was gone, and she felt like there was nothing left. This mother was a widow, and her only son is dead. So her husband is gone, no kids left, and it says that he was a man. So she's probably older. Probably no hope of getting married, having more kids, starting a family again. It's just gone. And she's a widow, so she can't make money in this culture. So maybe her son was providing for her. Her only provision is now gone too, right? No husband, no family, everyone's gone, and now no money either. Maybe she had raised her son as a good Jewish boy. She had loved him, made all the right choices. He was walking with God. Everything looked great. But even still, she's in a hopeless situation, right? Because that happens. Who's ever heard of someone saying, "I thought I did it all right, But now here they are. I thought I made all the right choices. I did everything I knew to do. And yet here we are. We can feel like that, right? Maybe you raised your kids in the church and you did all the things you knew to do, but still they're on a path that is completely contrary to how you raised them. Because regardless of what we'd like, sometimes our kids make their own choices. Even when we know it's not the best one, even when we've told them it's not the best one, they still have that mind of their own, right? And maybe you're sitting here and you're like, I've got nothing left but memories of the hopes and dreams that I thought for them. Maybe instead of parenting hopes and dreams, this story represents a marriage or a career that you thought you did everything right, but now there's nothing left. Maybe you took all the steps that you knew to take, and still there's defeat. Again, this mother's solution for her hopes and dreams is Jesus. He is our resurrection life. When we feel like everything that we have ever worked for is dead, again, it's come to Jesus. When the fruit of our life is nothing but thistles, it's come to Jesus. When there's nothing left, it's come to Jesus. We can turn our empty hands and we can worship, just like they did in the story. They glorified God. We can worship God because we know that with him, nothing is hopeless. And with him, he can resurrect and redeem and restore anything that we place in his hands. Isaiah 40, verse 31 says that, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will rise up like wings on eagles. And I looked up this cool stat about eagles because I'm like, oh yeah, they can fly a long time without flapping their wings, right? They can fly for 5 hours without flapping their wings, which is the equivalent of 100 miles or 160 kilometers, which is like from here to Toronto without a wing flap. Here to Detroit, no wing flap. Here to Cleveland, nothing, right? And that's the type of hope that we're supposed to have. That type of effortless hope, that an eagle could fly that distance without a wing flap, without an ounce of effort, just soaring. And that's the type of hope that we're supposed to have. Zero effort. There is no effort in your hope for your kids, even when it seems like hope is gone. It just is. So the third parent that we're going to look at is the one who thought that they were done. And we're going to go to Acts 36, verse 40, Acts 9, verse 36. And we're going to look at Tabitha. Your Bible might call her Dorcas, too. Now there was in Joppa a disciple named Tabitha, which translated means Dorcas. She was full of good works and acts of charity. In those days she became ill and died, and when they had washed her and laid her in an upper room. Since Lydia was near Joppa, the disciples, hearing that Peter was there, sent 2 men to him, urging him, please come with us without delay. So Peter rose and went with them, and when he arrived, they took him to the upper room. All the widows stood beside him weeping and showing tunics and other garments that Dorcas made while she was with them. But Peter put them all outside and knelt down and prayed. And turning to the body, he said, Tabitha, arise. And she opened her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up. And he gave her his hand and raised her up. Then calling all the saints and widows, he presented her alive. And it became known throughout all Joppa, and many believed in the Lord. And he stayed in Joppa for many days with one Simon, a tanner. So this is one who feels like their parenting journey is done. They're just finished. Maybe you've run the race really well. Maybe you've made some choices that you wish you hadn't. Whatever it is, you're kind of at the end. Maybe your kids have started their own families, or they're beyond your current influence. One thing I love about Tabitha is that she didn't allow her influence to be limited to her own family. Right? We don't know whether she was married. It doesn't specify if she has any kids, but she's out with others. Tabitha was constantly looking for how she could make the lives around her easier. She was dead until Peter walked in, right? There's not much more done than that, right? She's pretty done. But Peter walks in, and just like Tabitha, we can't allow what we believe to be the end to stop us. Okay? Our culture doesn't tend to appreciate older generations. Right? We hear tons of news stories of nursing homes that are atrocious, right? But even before that, we prolong adulthood by pushing forward being a teenager. Oh no, they're not an adult yet, even though they're 25. It's okay, they're not an adult yet. Let's just prolong this youth. We cover up grays with hair dye. We put on wrinkle cream. You wouldn't want to look older, right? Because our culture hates aging. And we push aside all of the wisdom of those older generations as old school, or it's not applicable anymore, or we don't need that, right? But Lisa Bevere, I know we've done a few studies, has done a lot of stuff about connecting the generations. So I'm going to read a quote from her Facebook that it says, "Young women and old women, we need each other. Older women, you are a treasury of wisdom. The next generation needs to glean from the lessons you learned the hard way. Younger women, we need your questions to find perspective. We are only stronger together. Don't believe the enemy's lie that you have nothing to offer." So if you're like Tabitha today and you feel like you're just done, you've got nothing left to offer, like Peter said to Tabitha, it's time to arise, because there is still more for those around you that you have. You are valuable to the people around you, no matter your stage in life. We need you. So today, we have a solution, right? Whether you're a spiritual parent, a biological parent, a grandparent, or all the different ways that you parent those who are around us, we don't need another thing to do. We don't need another list to check. We don't need another book to read or a parenting guideline to follow, even though I love those lists. I do. I really do. All of the personality test things that I say are like, you like to check lists. I'm like, I do. I'll even make a list on my list so I can check it off, because there's a certain amount of satisfaction in just checking those things off. But I don't need another list. It's not going to help things. There isn't a magic pill that makes parenting easy, or a morning routine that guarantees your day is going to be a success. There isn't any income or a number of volunteer hours. There isn't anything you could do that will guarantee that your children will turn into good Christians. Your house could never be clean enough. Your house could never be dirty enough. All these things are distractions from the real thing. So the secret is in Mary and Martha. So we're going to go to Luke 10. In verse 38. Now, as they were on their way, Jesus entered a village. A woman named Martha welcomed him into her house, and she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teachings. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went up to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her to help me." But the Lord answered, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken from her." That's all it is sitting at Jesus' feet. The secret is 1 Corinthians 11:1. Follow me as I follow Christ. As spiritual parents, biological parents, grandparents, all of those different parenting ways, we follow Christ, and the rest is up to him. Lay down your burdens, lift your eyes to the one who has chosen and equipped you for the job at hand. So I'm going to read you a story. It's only part of a story, but it's kind of long, so excuse me while I sit here and stare at my screen and not into your lovely eyes. So this is a story of a woman who, I'm just going to make my screen bigger so I don't have to stare quite as much here. A woman from the 1700s. So, if a stranger walked through a rural village in Epworth, England, on any given day between 1700 and 1720 and peered through the window of the home of the rector on a local Anglican church, he might have caught sight of something quite strange. Depending on the time of day, this observer might have seen a woman sitting in a chair with her kitchen apron pulled up over her head while 10 children read, studied, or played all around her. 2 of these 10 children would have been little boys, John and Charles, who would have grown up to shape the course of Christian history and thus change the world. The woman under the apron would have been Susanna Wesley, who assumed this odd posture for 2 hours almost every day. In a moment, you will understand why. Susanna understood the dynamics of a large family. Born 25th of 25 children, she met Samuel Wesley, an aspiring Anglican minister, and married him in 1688, when she was 19 years old. Susanna delivered 19 children, but 9, including 2 sets of twins, died in infancy. Another was accidentally smothered in the night by a nurse as Susanna recovered from labor and delivery. Her husband, Samuel, did not succeed in his 39-year assignment as a rector of the Church of Epworth. An intellectual academic, he simply did not understand or identify with the rural villagers in his parish, nor did they care for him. On 2 occasions, the Wesleys' parsonage burned down, most likely because of arson on the part of the Epworth's embittered parishioners. Susanna and the children were seldom spared harassment and insults. Samuel was not good with money, and he once spent several months in debtor's prison. The parsonage came with a small farm, but Samuel was not interested in it and ill-suited for farm work, so this too was left to Susanna to manage. This was in addition to the huge task of homeschooling all the children with their varying ages and gifts. Susanna's household organizational skills are the stuff of legend. She knew from personal experience that quality one-on-one time with a parent is hard to come by in a large family, yet powerfully important. So she set a rotating schedule through which each of her children spent an hour with her alone before bedtime on a designated night each week. What is more, she somehow found a way to manage the household and give her large brood of children a world-class education that included both classical and biblical learning. Her girls got the same rigorous education as did her boys, something virtually unheard of in that day. Traditionally, girls of that place and time were taught feminine skills such as needlework and music before undertaking the most basic education such as learning to read. Susanna firmly believed that was wrong-headed. The girls were taught the same curriculum as her boys. School hours were from 9 a.m. to noon, then 2 to 5, 6 days a week. All but the smallest children completed their assigned chores promptly before the start of the school day. As in many one-room schoolhouses in generations past, older children helped to teach the younger. Susanna took her relationship with God as seriously as her duties as wife and mother. Early in her life, she vowed that she would never spend more time in leisure entertainment than she did in Bible and prayer study. Even amid the most complex and busy years of her life as a mother, she still scheduled 2 hours each day for fellowship with God and time in His Word, and she adhered to that schedule faithfully. The challenge was finding place and privacy in a house filled to overflowing with children. Mother Wesley's solution to this was to bring her Bible to her favorite chair and throw her long apron up over her head, forming a sort of tent. This became something akin to the tent of meeting, the tabernacle in the days of Moses and the Old Testament. Every person in the household, from the smallest toddler to the oldest domestic helpers, knew well to respect this signal. When Susanna was under the apron, she was with God and was not to be disturbed, except in the case of the direst emergencies. There in the privacy of her little tent, she interceded for her husband and children and plumbed the deep mysteries of God in the scriptures. This holy discipline equipped her with a thorough and profound knowledge of the Bible. So we're going to end with the Same way that we began, that little quote from the back of my book. God isn't looking for first place finishers. Instead, he is inviting you to surrender your schedule, your emotions, and even your relationships to him. He is longing to run with you and carry you over the hard places. Growing with him is your goal.
You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Ministry Company, or join us in person at 1541 Fanshawe Park Road East, London, Ontario, on Sundays at 12:30 p.m. or Wednesday nights for prayer at 7 p.m.